This is Christian from GameWatcher, and here's our preview of Vikings, Wolves of Midgard. In our recent interview with Jan Turan, lead programmer at GameSfarm, he stated, if Blizzard is doing something and you want to compete with them, you need to reach at least the same level of quality, and that's really hard. When it comes to action RPGs in the same vein as Diablo 3, he's absolutely right. There aren't many developers who consistently create genre-defining games like Blizzard do, so when a competitor finally comes along, the developer really has to make their mark. The Slovakian developers may not be as renowned as Blizzard, but that's not going to stop them bringing something new to the table. Vikings, Wolves of Midgard is an action RPG set on the Shores of Midgard, a world based on the history of the Vikings and Norse mythology. Your village has been pillaged by creatures, and it's up to you to discover why and how to stop them. We played Vikings on an Xbox 360 controller, as the game doesn't support a keyboard and mouse yet. The controls seem awkward at first, as the developers have opted to use the right stick strictly as a means to dodge. Most games would have a face button as a dedicated role, but not Vikings. Instead, the game uses every other button for special abilities. Though we didn't think much of it at the time, this probably makes the game more action heavy, as you spend most of your time getting up close to enemies as opposed to walking backwards and throwing spears. Vikings encourages you to constantly attack enemies by building your rage bar. When you enter Berserker mode, your character gains a buff to their strength and the screen shifts to a translucent red hue. This short-lived mode supposedly enables you to take advantage of the game's destructible environments, offering you the opportunity to push enemies on falling rocks and drive them off steep cliffs. However, these prospects were not as obvious, and we didn't utilize rage mode in this raid during our playthrough. We started the game using a bow and arrow and a throwing knife, but once we were given the opportunity to switch to a real melee weapon alongside a ranged weapon, it made the game seem a lot more fun. Each new weapon starts off with very limited abilities, which slowly grows as you continue to play. Spamming your abilities is not possible as your stamina bar stops you from doing so, meaning you actually have to think about your actions before heading into a battle. One of the most apparent features in the game is the exposure system. The idea behind the exposure system appears to make the player more aware of their harsh environments and make survival an ongoing struggle, but it doesn't work as well as the developers may have hoped. Our experience with the system had us finding sources of heat in order to avoid frostbite. While this feature may differ to other action RPGs, it just seems more annoying than interesting. It took around a minute or so to build the exposure bar, with your character feeling the full effect of exposure after the bar completely filled. Upon realizing that you're about to reach your exposure limit, you'll be forced to look for any source of heat to deplete that bar. The system, at least in the ice sections of the game, breaks up any type of momentum you may have built, making the action part of the game seem quite disappointing. What's the point in having the system designed for attacking when you have to think about running back to a campfire after only a minute? Although this may encourage you to explore, we found ourselves backtracking often, which greatly lengthened the duration of some of our quests. Overall, Vikings is shaping up to achieve everything that it set out to do, but so far, we haven't seen anything that really makes it stand out. The addition of the exposure system didn't change the game in any meaningful way, aside from making the experience more awkward than it needed to be. Again, you could argue that this system forces you to explore, but it's not like the player wants to stay in the same place for ages. We didn't get a chance to test out many important aspects of the game, including the city/village building and the crafting system. Whether this will elevate Vikings from being an extremely competent, albeit a rather safe game, to an interesting action RPG that tries to do something new with the genre is another question entirely. Vikings plays it far too safe in almost every aspect, so we are almost certain it will turn out to be a decent game. We will have to wait until early 2017 to find out whether GameSfarm expands on some of Vikings' unique features. If the Slovakian developers manage to make some of the game's core mechanics interesting, they could end up creating a true competitor to the Diablo series.